Dave Patterson, the 1492 guy. In my work, quite often asked, well, what do we do now? Now, what I do, and we need to talk about, if you're not aware, what I do is talk about the 1492 reference being what was happening in the Western Hemisphere prior to Europeans coming over here. We're talking about hundreds of interesting, fascinating stories, innovations, inventions, accomplishments, gifts to the world, contributions that they made to our civilization that now go unrecognized and essentially invisible. So that's what I do, is talk about all those things. When I refer to people asking, what do we do now? The idea, my formula that I'm going to bypass the difficulties of the last 200 years because they're being too complicated and convoluted and complex, and that there's thousands of armies of people working on this stuff already, and that I have my hands full just with 1492 and looking at what was going on at that time, because there's a lot of very compelling information, and that's what I do. That's my message, is to share that Indians and Europeans were peers and co-equals, and to let people know these amazing contributions. So that's what I do. My book, some of the ways, hopefully you've had a chance to look at my book, 500 Years of Lies. You can definitely check that out. If you get a chance to go to my host events, I'd like to see you there at one of those, absolutely. And are you one of the 3%? There's a quiz on the website, the1492guy.com. And if you haven't taken that quiz, I hope you'll do so. Now, if you were a kid and we were talking about what it is that I do, before I try to answer that question, what do we do now? So if you were a kid, and we're all kids, aren't we? We just happen to grow up and we play with bigger toys and more important toys and multi-million-dollar toys. But if you were a kid and I wanted to get your attention, then I would look at some of the gifts of the indigenous of the Western Hemisphere, our hosts here in our home hemisphere. And then I would talk about chewing gum, vanilla, chocolate, French fries, popcorn, potato chips, balloons, kites, caramel corn, maple syrup, peanuts, popcorn, stilts, French fries, and probably some more. Now, that's the way I get the attention of kids. The way I get the attention of everybody else is a lot more involved and usually takes a little bit of time. So what do we do now? Well, as I said, I try to bypass these things, but certainly there's some things we could do immediately. In North America, the indigenous have 2% of the land in North America. Now in Canada, they have 0.2%, a fifth of 1%. Remember, at one point they had all the land, 100% of it, right? So they have 0.2% of the land. They have 5% of our population. So people say to me, what do we do now? What can we do? Like, it's this complicated thing. Well, that's one thing that's obvious to me that you could do, is make that equal the percentage. So 25 times the amount of land would just get them to where their population is today, 5%. 5% are indigenous, and they have 0.2% of the land. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So give them the land. Give them 5% as a bare minimum. Like, that could be done by Monday morning, I would say, as a bare minimum, as a starting point, just to even negotiate about all this stuff that's going on. They want to negotiate away their lands. They're not supposed to be here. That's why they have so much difficulty, and why we're always hearing about how they can't manage their situation. Everything has been organized for 500 years that they wouldn't be here. And that's the way, the premise that's been in place, and that's why we wind up with where we are today. But certainly, when we go into speaking to the indigenous, there isn't the political will to do what I just suggested a few moments ago that could be done immediately, just to reach a starting point where you could even, in good conscience, go into some negotiation, or to try to talk about, what are we going to do next, That would seem like a bare minimum. Get it up to their population. Give them that. And so that's 5% of the land. It's all owned by you and I and almost totally owned by the Queen. Queen owns most of it. Who's the Queen? She doesn't need it. I think she's doing just fine. Don't really think she needs so a little bit of land. And instead of then negotiating this to give them their rights, as they say, which really is trying to turn them into municipalities so they would be like anyone else, and then they really, in terms of the rights that they deserve, they wouldn't have any then. So as a starting point to even begin negotiations on anything to do with what are we going to do today, that should be a starting point. So there's my answer. What do we do now? There's a simple thing. Let's just get them up to the 5% at least as a bare minimum starting point before we even sit down at any tables. Okay? Now there's an answer to that one. 1492 Guy signing off. Remember the website, the1492guy.com. And I hope that you'll spread the message. Thanks a lot. Bye for now.